Up. Recently, you might have seen a clip of me titled, I lost huge money on Robinhood, which wound up getting over 11 million views. And I hate to say it, but looking back, that entire clip aged horribly. In fact, watching that has caused me to look back throughout my other financial mishaps to the point where if I could talk about them openly and help one person not make those same mistakes that I made, this video will be 100% worth it. Seriously, in a way, it's cost me about $1 million. Just
All right. I am a full transparency here. I'm a Grand Stephan fan. I've been following him for probably about 6 years now. And his earlier stuff when he was on YouTube dealing with real estate, because that's what I enjoy investing in. It was masterful. And not to say that his newer stuff isn't. I feel like he's kind of gotten away from real estate and more into stocks, and nothing wrong with that at all. I'm getting into that as well. But his real estate stuff, the earlier stuff for like it would be 4 years ago now, maybe. That's the stuff that was really good. Anyone who's starting out in real estate, that's the stuff I encourage you to watch, just because he was dealing with smaller assets and doing a lot of the work himself and learning. It was very gritty Graham Stephan before the really, really big success. So that's something I would encourage you to watch. But let's see how he lost $1 million. Hopefully we can take away and learn something from this. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Um, that's one of the things I noticed. People are watching the videos but not subscribing. If you could do that, I would really appreciate it. It helps the channel out. Thank you so much. All right, let's get to this.
to sit here and make this video. So hopefully I could help you avoid the same fate. Oh, and also big thank you to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video, but more on that later. Anyway, let's start with my first mistake, and that would be the stock market. Here's the thing. Prior to 2020, I mostly just invested in real estate. But when COVID hit and I saw everything falling 50 to 80%, I believe that that would be a pretty good time to buy into areas like airlines, hotels, restaurants, oil, and so on, thinking that we don't usually get this big of a discount, so I bought in pretty heavy. But to my disbelief, within the first few months, those initial stock picks had increased 50 to 100% in value, and in 2021, I saw Robinhood IPO, and at that time, my thought process was, geez, this seems like a pretty good deal with all the money flowing into the market, so I plunked down about $150,000 at $35 a share, and then shortly afterwards, in 2022, everything came crashing down. So when it hit $20 a share,
scary
I
times.
bought 2,500 more shares. When it hit $10 a share, I went and bought more shares. But despite me really liking the company, the stock price just kept going down. And by mid-2022, I made the decision to sell all of my individual stocks for the sake of simplifying down into 3 index funds, and that's it. And that also meant that all of my Robinhood stock was sold for about a 50% loss. Yep, in terms of how that's played out, it's now trading for almost $100 a share. And had I just held, I would have been up more than 250%.
Okay. Yeah, so I can already tell this is going to be painful. Um, One of the lessons here is right out of the gate. When you go to buy an investment, an asset, or anything like that, whether it be the stock market, creating a business, buying a piece of real estate, whatever that asset is, go into it with a minimum 5-year projection. I'd go 10, because 5 years goes by so fast that, especially real estate, you want to hold for the long haul. And there's some stocks out there. I'll be the first to admit I'm not a stock guy in terms of like, I'm learning a lot about it. I get the gist of it, but I don't particularly like know the ins and outs and how that business works. I'm learning it. But I know one thing is you hold for the long haul. Don't invest thinking you're going to hit a quick flip. That's gambling. You want to go gamble at the casino. Uh, Day trading, I'm not day trading expert at all, so I won't even begin to speak on that like I even know what that means. But let's continue on.
Even though I've certainly had other stocks do incredibly well, when you balance everything out between all the winners and the losers, I would have been financially better off just buying into index funds, and that's it. Although the next loss is something I never could have predicted, and that would be the Tesla Roadster. In 2022, I made the decision to sell off my Tesla stock at $314 a share to buy a 1 of 26 yellow Tesla Roadster with 27,000 miles on the clock. To me, everything about this transaction just made sense. I could use my Robinhood losses to offset my Tesla profits, use those Tesla profits to buy a Tesla Roadster,
Seems
and my
logical.
bet long term is that the value of the car would outpace the value of the stock. After all, the Tesla Roadster was the first car from Tesla. It popularized the electric vehicle. It's the only car to be floating around in space. There's estimated to be less than 1,500 of these remaining, and yellow is the rarest factory color. So I thought to myself, the Tesla Roadster has to be a future classic car that's going to be worth a ton of money one day, right? Wrong. Within a few months of buying the car, Elon Musk purchased Twitter. He became a little controversial, and all of a sudden, a glut of Tesla Roadsters started flooding the market. I hate to say it, but I've lost, at minimum, $30,000 on this car, and to make matters even worse, I've only driven it 500 miles over 3 years, while also spending over $10,000 in repairs and maintenance to replace some items that have just worn out on the car over time. Needless to say, as a car, it's a blast to drive, but as an investment, unless these one day sell.
Let me just say this. For those of you who are not car enthusiasts, and well, first off, for those of you who don't have money, and by money, I mean money you could just, if you lit it on fire, it wouldn't change your world. If you could light it on fire and it affects your world, don't get crazy in these cars. Cars can be some of the worst investments if you don't know what you're doing and you're not a car enthusiast. There are some vehicles out there that the car people, gurus, they know about that can be worth a lot of money and actually are assets. For most people, that's not a field you want to play in. Again, goes back to gambling. Don't gamble with anything with an engine in it. I don't recommend it. Not an investment. Again, there are exceptions to every rule, but for the most of us, that's not an area of our expertise. So it's better to stick with your expertise and don't play yourself, because the car game is a different game, just like watches, just like purses. You got to know a little bit about that industry before you decide to dive into it. Let's continue.
Sell for $250,000 to $500,000, I'm going to take a loss at roughly so far $80 a mile for what I've driven it. But hey, if you're curious how much I would have made putting my money in just about anything other than the car, here you go. Oh, and by the way, since I don't drive this car enough, if you want to make me a serious offer to buy it from me, I'll link to all the information down below in the description. Maybe it's going to be one of those moments where as soon as I sell it, the value is going to skyrocket. With my luck, that's what's going to happen. Anyway, in terms of me losing even more money, and hopefully you not falling into the same mistakes, here's something that will apply to everybody, and that would be paying taxes. In 2014, I started working with a new CPA who seemed pretty diligent and well-priced. Like, she'd help me optimize my income, structure LLCs, tell me different ways that I could save. She handled my taxes. At the very beginning,
Okay, I can already see this is kind of shaping up to be bad news. Let me say something to people who are, you maybe get in the business and you're getting your tax professional. There are some people out there, and this is not a knock on you tax preparer people. There are some people that do multiple disciplines. I particularly don't like that. Like, you have people who are attorneys who do taxes and things of that nature, and they do multiple disciplines. Personally, I don't care for that, just because each of those are different disciplines. It's the same as, like, you know, boxing versus wrestling versus martial arts. Those are different disciplines. Rare you're going to find someone who's good at all three, but maybe you find someone who's good at one, really good at one, just like we're a master of their craft, right? The Floyd Mayweather, like, that person who is just a surgeon like that. That's possible, but to find someone who's got all of those disciplines down to a T, you're looking for a unicorn, and personally, I don't think they exist. That's why I had everything separated, have my attorney do the legal documents, LLC formation, all that stuff. And then you have your tax people focus on tax planning and CPAs and all that stuff. So just word to the wise, in my opinion, and I don't have as nearly much money or nearly as much of a YouTube following as Graham Stephan. Um, I just it makes me uncomfortable having all those disciplines under one roof. Make sure you farm it out, unless they're one of those firms that has a CPA, a tax attorney, or whatever, whatever. Like, okay, that's different. I'm talking about one individual who has a business that specializes in all three. I don't know. That's a little funky to me, but let's continue.
Everything was fine. Although, as I started earning a little bit more money and doing YouTube videos, I started to get the sense that she didn't actually know what she was doing.
Here we go.
But until that point, nothing had gone wrong, so I continued.
Oh,
And then 2020 hit. In 2020, she recommended that I get a 6-month extension to give her more time to file my taxes.
sign of
So
the
I
end.
went and asked her, okay, that's totally fine. How much do I have to pay the IRS? To which she said, oh, don't worry, you're all caught up. You're not going to have to pay again until the end of the year. So I trusted her. I just let it be and I continued on making YouTube videos until about 12 months later when I got a bill from the IRS and the state of California for an $80,000
Oh
underpayment.
my god. That okay. Um, this is not a shot on Graham at all. Like, you don't know what you don't know. Having said that, sometimes really smart people tend to get in their own way. Uh, I'm guilty of this. Not saying I'm like super smart or anything like that, but I shouldn't say smart, but sometimes really success. When you've experienced success, sometimes you get in your own way. I'll say that. And that's not to mean that everything you do will be successful, but you got this momentum, you feeling good, right? Maybe you got some money flowing in, you got some motion, and now all of a sudden you feel like you know a little bit about everything. Sometimes you could be your own worst enemy. One of the things that I do in my own life is I usually will call a friend. What was the game? Want to be a millionaire where you had a lifeline where you can call a friend before you answer the question? You really need to bake that into your personal life. You get into a situation, you get jammed up, before you make a big decision or anything like that, phone a friend, use the lifeline. Um, because it has saved me time and time again. And part of the reason it saved me because I don't see everything. I'm good at maybe these few things, but I have blind spots. We all have blind spots. And I think your friends, the people that are close to you, don't just call Joe Schmo. Call someone who has a vested interest in your life and success and want to see you successful. And they have the best for you. Maybe that means that they don't always tell you what you want to hear, but you know, chips on the line, they have your best interest at heart. Have a few of those people because those people are rare. You don't get a lot of them. And this is the benefit of having a spouse as well. But sometimes you need to think outside of your spouse. They can't just be the only person that you're bouncing your ideas off of, but they do obviously have a vested interest in seeing your success. But phoning a friend is extremely helpful. I've done it numerous times over the years, and it has saved me again and again and again. Because again, I have blind spots. I don't see it. And then when I do see it, sometimes it's too late. And I'm like, oh, wish I would have caught that sooner. So phone a friend. If something feels like it sounds good, but it's just something that rubbed me the wrong way, listen to that voice. And that's the time you want to get on the phone. And hey, you got a minute? Can we talk? I have the situation, like, explain the situation, and just, before you make any rational decision, because as you can see, it's going to cost. And at least I feel good about talking to someone before I made a big decision. And sometimes I talk to a few friends. It's not just one friend. I'll talk to a few friends. I'm like, hey, so, and get a mixed opinion. and then you can kind of decipher that, because again, you will have blind spots.
Penalty in my taxes. Of course, when I confronted her about this, she admitted that she made a mistake.
Mm.
But in order for that mistake to be reversed, I had to go and pay the $80,000.
Oh.
So I did. But when it came time to getting it reversed, a year later, the state of California denied my request because they said an accountant's error was not reasonable cause for not paying my taxes in full at the time it's due, even though I had written evidence of everything. I then filed an appeal, waited another year, and it was also denied. So instead of going after her errors in emissions insurance, I just took the loss on it. I figured it's my mistake for trusting her in the first place, and I switched accountants expecting it not to happen again. Except her mistakes didn't end there. Once I switched accountants, he caught that she didn't file the proper election on my corporation, essentially meaning that I would be double taxed on 2 years worth of income. Thankfully, we
This is just getting bad. Let me just get you another freeze frame here.
barely made the cutoff for all of that to be reversed and file the proper elections. But my gosh, lesson learned.
Oh yeah, this is bad on top of bad. Thank God he caught it. I'm glad he worked out. But again, you have your team with you. Trust but verify. Trust but verify. You do not. And I learned this the hard way too. Just because you have someone doing your taxes and all that stuff, you want to make sure that it's done properly, especially when you have businesses and pass throughs and things of that nature. One practice you could do, especially earlier on, and it's not a good practice. It's a good practice to do even as you're continuing your relationship with your professionals, is have someone else in that same field double check their work, because you're not an expert in that tax law, So what I've done in the past is, once my tax preparer has prepared it, I'll go find a random person I don't know and say, "Hey, can I pay you a flat fee just to put eyes on this, review it, and tell them what your goals are?" Because they don't know, and generally they'll ask you, "Can I have the previous year's tax too?" And you submit both years, and then pay the fee, and they'll go through and start highlighting anything, if there's anything that out of ordinary, or if it doesn't align with the plan, or if there's something happening that's not done correctly or illegally. You can catch that stuff. That's a good practice and a good cheat code that I learned earlier on. Have other professionals check their work. Is it more time consuming? Yes. Does it cost more? Yes, absolutely. But does it save you in the end? Absolutely. And it doesn't mean that everyone's always has bad intentions. It just means sometimes people go on autopilot. Sometimes they don't, they just don't check their work. They start just checking boxes. And you definitely will, you're responsible for it. As you can see, there's no leniency in the law for that. It's all on you. You should have known. So uh be careful out there.
That's why when it comes to your taxes, don't cheap out. Get the best person you can. Get a second opinion if it's necessary. Make
See?
sure you're paid up to date. And if errors do happen, because we're all human, just make sure they're corrected or amended as fast as possible. Although before we go into this next mistake, which is probably one of the most difficult for me to talk about that I've never shared before, it helps to remember that in the big picture, at least I wasn't browsing the internet without a VPN. Like, here's the thing. Anytime you connect to public Wi-Fi, or really anytime you surf
Okay,
the
it's
internet,
commercial. We're gonna
your
fast
service
forward.
providers, if you're into watching Netflix, it's during server maintenance. That's comes to cryptocurrency, unfortunately, I've lost way more than I would like to admit. See, for the last 8 years, I've been buying a small amount of Bitcoin and Ethereum on a regular basis, and over time, that grew to like 2 to 3% of my portfolio. At first, I didn't think much of it, but over time, I thought that it would be a good idea to spread it out throughout various exchanges just to be able to see what they were like and see if I enjoyed them. But unfortunately, a few of those exchanges ended up going bankrupt, and in the process, I lost about 3 Bitcoin and just over 50 Ethereum that got frozen. Now, on the bright side, if you could call it that, the price of Bitcoin back then, at that time, was about $20,000. I invested an amount that I was okay risking, and that was only a portion of my Bitcoin and Ethereum. But regardless, when I see
Ken goes back to that earlier conversation. If you can't light it on fire, if you can light it on fire and it doesn't affect your world or your life doesn't change not one bit, then, go ahead and invest. If it's a smart investment. If you're investing with money that you're eating off of, big mistake. Big mistake. if you lose it and your world shatters and crumbles, that's you never want to do that. Never want to do that. So be responsible.
See the price today and to see how much all of that could have been worth. It
Ooh,
stings to know
man.
just how easily this all could have been prevented by sticking with the phrase, not your keys, not your coins, which is something I've repeated on the channel for years and willingly chose not to follow because I thought I was playing it safe by spreading out my money throughout various places. Separate from that, this is also the reason why, more recently, I've just stuck to buying a Bitcoin ETF. And that way, I don't have to worry about personal custody, I don't have to worry about any security leaks, and if anything happens, I'm blaming BlackRock. Although speaking of things I haven't really talked about before, my next one is the biggest loss that I have taken on something, and that would be a failed business. A few years ago, it just seemed like everyone in the YouTube space was diversifying outside of content. You had Alex Ramosi, Alex Becker, Max Tuning, Nelk, Mr. Beast, Logan Paul. It was everywhere. So I thought, building a business is the way to go. In fact, almost serendipitously, someone reached out at the exact same time that I was thinking about doing this, and we talked it through. The timing seemed right, I liked the concept, and it seemed like a win-win. I could focus my time making YouTube videos, and they would handle all of the back end because I didn't have the time or interest in doing that. At first, all of it seemed great, but over time, I started to get the impression that maybe some things were being rushed. Perhaps we had to adjust our expectations or possibly move a little bit slower. And at that point, I just wanted to take a pause on the whole thing. But I also thought to myself, Graham, you're such a control freak. Why do you have to micromanage everybody? Just delegate and trust the people who you trust. So I let it be. However, not even 6 months later, it became very apparent that both of us had very different expectations from what we wanted and what we expected from the future. So by the time we amicably cut ties, I was out about $250,000, all because I wasn't happy and totally satisfied with the direction it was heading. That one was a very difficult chapter to close, but you know what? I kept my word to the other person. There are zero hard feelings. I blame myself for not being as involved as I should have been, and I did what I thought was best for the future because I didn't want to be tied to something I didn't wholeheartedly believe in and want to stand behind. Ultimately, this taught me that unless you're actively involved in every aspect of the business and see it through 100% from start to finish, it's not worth pursuing.
I 100% agree. If your heart's not in it and you're not willing to put the extra muscle behind it, or you don't have a good team in place, it's not going to work. You're the secret sauce. So sometimes you got to do the extras that people won't do or look at the details that people won't look at. And if you're not passionate about it, you definitely should not engage. Anyway, this video is getting kind of long. I just wanted to give you guys some quick reaction notes on this this video that came across my timeline. So good lessons in here. Hopefully you guys got some good gems. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care.